Hi, I'm Torte Lini. If you watched my previous video on best heroes to play in 7.37e, I heavily recommended Nyx Assassin and Bounty Hunter as one of the best supports to play this patch. We can see that on Dota2ProTracker.com, where Bounty Hunter and Nyx Assassin are very highly rated with over 53 to around 55% win rate and among the top 6 heroes to play as a pause for offlane support. But even though these heroes are considered very strong due to the meta of fast action mid-game brawling and ganks, that doesn't mean this hero should always be played, and more importantly, that the hero is right for you as regular players. Sometimes picking Nyx or Bounty Hunter can actually be a detriment to your team and straight up be the reason you lost a match, even if you personally played well. Okay, let me explain. What actually makes these two early game heroes so good right now? Well, it is basically coming down to the meta. Right now there is a lot of early game brawling, so heroes that accentuate and accelerate those early game ganks and fights are seeing massive popularity. Heroes like Spectre, Dawnbreaker, Puck, Lich, Clockwork are seeking to achieve multiple goals like winning the lane, or enabling other lanes to win, or how about having the global ability to assist in any early game fight or gank. These post level 6 brawls secure the map, accelerate your team's net worth, and keep attention away from your pause 1 farming like a madman in the jungle, like you see with popular picks such as Morphling, Alchemist, or even Drow Ranger. And this is where you see Bounty Hunter and Nyx Assassin come in. They both run contrary to the meta, but also massively emphasize it. They're great heroes to keep momentum up and capitalize on that rollout for early game kills. Playmaking pause 4 heroes in a meta that has tempo mid laners like Invoker, Lina, or Queen of Pain means you have a lot of map movement and ganks. And again, all this gives room for your pause 1 to focus on farming and coming aligned early while your team controls the map and sets the tempo of the game. Bounty Hunter and Nyx are at their strongest at level 6 and keep the pressure on and get rewarded for it. But they also run contrary to the meta in the sense that they greatly counter those same carry heroes I mentioned that were tucked away in the jungle. Morphling, Alchemist, Drow Ranger, Shadow Fiend, Spectre, these are all heroes that don't like to be bursted down early game while they seek out their core items. So simply put, you have two scouting and playmaking heroes that can sniff out farming cores and tag team them with global heroes like Spectre, Dawnbreaker, and Invoker, or hold those heroes down to burst them like with Queen of Pain, Clockwork, or Mars. So that's the good news. Now let's talk about the bad news. We suck, and worse, we suck at realizing that we've always sucked and are currently sucking right now in our match. If you thought that the pimple on your face was pure pus and dead skin, wait until you try to play Nyx Assassin and Bounty Hunter and realize just how much deadweight you truly are. Nothing says Christmas spirit like giving away gold with each death, your crew trying to gank like a little bitch. Honestly, I always hesitate in saying that Bounty Hunter and Nyx Assassin are the best supports because they're not always the best, especially at lower levels, because they tend to be more of a drag on the team rather than a bonus or plus. For starters, they're strongest in the early game post level 6, but not everyone is hitting those levels on time. What's worse is these players try to be fancy, and instead of just sitting in their lane to reach level 6 in a timely manner, they try to roam, snipe couriers, whatever. So they do hit level 6 but in like 10 to 12 minutes and end up missing their whole power spike timing. So on the flip side, Bounty Hunter and Nyx Assassin are absolute ass in the lane. There's nothing worse than a Bounty Hunter who walks to and fro in the lane, trying to get his 10,000 daily steps in for his Fitbit, while you, as a core offlaner, sweat your ass off trying to harass the enemy safe laner, guarantee last hits, fend off the enemy aggressive support, stack and pull your hard neutral camps. There's literally not much Nyx Assassin can do except stack ancients, maybe pull the hard neutral camp, and disrupt the incoming enemy creep wave. Now tell me, how many pause 4 supports have you played with where they do none of that and just rush Handemias or some shit like that? So while Nyx Assassin and Bounty Hunter are great heroes post level 6, it can be an excruciating lane for your pause 3 core offlaner knowing you're not really able to do a whole lot. On the flip side, nothing is more frustrating as a Nyx or Bounty Hunter player and end up having a passive hero lineup. I'm talking about those teams where you end up stuck with players that just want to play World of Warcraft in the jungle, farming for the next 30 minutes, while you rip your hair out trying to solo gank and kill enemies and just end up dying doing so. If you don't have a team that can be active with your specialties in the early game, you're going to be pretty much a fish out of water with Nyx and Bounty Hunter. What's worse is that typically supports are first picked, so unless your team actively coordinates with you in the pick phase, you might end up with a draft that can't do a whole lot for you. On the flip side, if the enemy team is especially tanky, like with heroes such as Axe, Tiny, Bristleback, then you'll find that getting those kills and setting the tempo of the game won't really yield as much return for the time spent trying to succeed at it. Finally, late game, Nyx and Bounty Hunter fall off hard. Fights are longer, enemies are tankier, and sentries are plenty around the board. Nyx can't use Vendetta without getting caught out or frankly stopped, so he must rely on Impale, Dagon, and Mind Flayer to do some output in a fight. Bounty Hunter gets relegated to more of a utility hero, focusing on enabling his team with items like Lotus, Boots of Bearing, Hype, etc. So all in all, these heroes need a lot of things to align and in a timely manner to excel at what they're meant to do and succeed in doing. At the highest level, there is a lot of leniency in picking these heroes because players are inherently more aware and active in taking advantage of these heroes. At the lower level, you cannot always assume players play as we expect them to, and that's a factor that isn't shown in any statistics or data we can draw and conclude from. Even the basis that matches end in a timely fashion, thus making the most of the net worth lead you've earned with these two pause forward ganking supports, is something you can't just assume will always be capitalized on from your teammates. In terms of builds, Nyx Assassin is pretty straightforward. Arcane Boots into Dagon 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. As mentioned, this hero is all tempo and ganks, so you need to stay on top of your opponents by regularly amping up your damage combo of Vendetta into Impale, Dagon, and ending with Mind Flare. Once you start falling behind or the enemies are starting to be wary of your ganks, you can start transitioning to items like Eul Scepter, where you will rely on Vendetta to close gaps on opponents to then cast Eul into a guaranteed Impale. Similar with Blink Dagger, you are staying out of fights until you can safely blink on your ideal target to then Impale and Dagon to Mind Flare them. So you are shifting away from damage you get from Vendetta unless there's a clear opportunity to pull it off, and focusing more on jumping and stunning a key enemy and letting your team do the real damage. We typically max Impale as it deals the most damage with your early game Vendetta the ganks, and Mind Flare as your finisher is maxed last, as the bonus damage you deal with it is a static 25% at all levels. Don't forget you can farm with Mind Flare since 7.36, as it allows you to insta-kill neutral creeps that should help you massively in getting your Dagon at a respectable time. Now for Bounty Hunter, it's even more straightforward of a skill build. We max out Shuriken Toss and just keep spamming that baby in the lane. It has a low cooldown and low mana cost. Since one of your first items is Spirit Vessel, you have some mana regeneration to help spam that ability early on. Bounty Hunter's items are pretty open-ended late game. All he has is Track and Shuriken Toss, as getting near opponents with Shadow Walk is super dangerous and likely to get you killed. So Bounty Hunter usually picks up items to enable his team to do most of the work, so items like Boots of Bearing, Pipe of Insight, Force Staff, and Solar Crest are all good pickups for him. What makes Bounty Hunter so strong is its through and through facet. With just one track target, your Shuriken Toss can hit an enemy on the way to your first target before bouncing back to them for even more damage, essentially doubling up the value of your Shuriken Toss. Simply put, like most supports, as a match gets into the late game, the amount of influence supports like Nyx Assassin and Bounty Hunter can have in a fight diminishes. However, unlike other major supports, these heroes lose half of their utility and abilities as the game progresses, and what's worse is that if you don't succeed in the early to mid game, you are not likely to be of any use towards the late game, especially since you cannot afford any team-based major items. So playing Nyx and Bounty Hunter are meta because of what is being popularly played, but also how short matches are typically. That said, there are so many factors to consider, both in terms of who you're up against and what is your lineup, and that makes BH and Nyx a questionable pick. All in all, if you suck or are at a rank where most people suck, double check if Nyx and Bounty are the right choice. Shitty players might also mean you can straight up carry your games, but again, then you need to actually end the game before the enemy team eventually outgrows you. Hey, so that's pretty much it for me. Be sure to let me know in the comments below how much Nyx and Bounty Hunter have been ruining, or maybe even straight up winning your games. I know for me, it hasn't really been working out, sadly. If you like these videos and my Dota 2 guides, please support the channel either by becoming a paying member or subscribing on Twitch. You can even subscribe for free on Twitch by using an Amazon Prime. Your support keeps the guides and this educational channel going, and I'd really appreciate the help. If you can't afford it, no worries. Please share my content with others, as not everyone is aware that I make these educational content type videos, and I'd like to help as many people as I can. Thanks.